I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I never thought I'd stand here again, my trembling fingers touching the rusted padlock on the gate that had haunted my dreams for 30 years. The Montana wind whispered through the tall prairie grass, carrying memories I'd spent decades trying to bury. Just take pictures for the real estate listing, sign the papers next week, and it's over, Marcus had said, his voice carrying that familiar tone, the one that treated me like fragile crystal, ready to shatter. The same tone everyone used since Edward died 6 months ago. When Lucas, my firstborn, my golden boy, I couldn't even complete the thought, even after all these years. The mining company's offer is more than fair, Mom. $20 million. Think of what we could do with that, Sarah had insisted yesterday, her lawyer husband Nathan nodding beside her. Dad would want this for us. But would he? In our 30 years of marriage after we left this place, Edward mentioned the ranch so rarely that sometimes I wondered if he'd erased it from his memory as thoroughly as I'd tried to. Except for those trips 3 times a year. Fishing trips, medical conferences, reunions with old friends, different excuses, always the same strange quietness when he returned. I pushed against the gate, expecting resistance from 3 decades of abandonment, but it swung open with surprising ease. The dirt road ahead wasn't overgrown as it should have been. It was maintained with fresh tire tracks. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small against the Montana sky. As I walked the half-mile toward where our house had stood, I noticed other discrepancies. The fences were repaired. A new windmill turned on the hill. In the distance, buildings, new ones, not just our old farmhouse. As I crested the final hill, I stopped dead. Below me spread not the abandoned ranch I expected, but a thriving community. The original farmhouse stood freshly painted. Beside it, a dozen small cabins formed a semicircle. A large barn gleamed red in the afternoon sun. A greenhouse caught the light. And people, there were people everywhere. A woman with salt and pepper hair tied in a ponytail looked up, shielded her eyes against the sun, and spoke to a teenager beside her who ran toward the main house. Who was this woman on my land? Had Edward sold the property without telling me? "Mrs. Lee?" the woman called as she approached. "Helen Lee?" "Yes," I managed. "Who are you? What is this place?" "My name is Olivia Santos. Everyone calls me Liv. I've been waiting for you to come." "Waiting? This ranch has been abandoned for 30 years." A sad smile touched her lips. "No, Mrs. Lee, this ranch has never been abandoned, not for a single day since you left." My knees weakened. "That's impossible. We moved to Denver after Lucas, after the accident." "Edward never—" "Your husband came back the very next month," she said gently. "And every month after that for 30 years until his heart gave out." The world tilted sideways. Edward had been coming here monthly? All those fishing trips, conferences, weekends with old college friends. "You're lying," I whispered, though something deep inside recognized the truth. "I wish I were, for your sake. Would you like to come inside? There's someone who's been especially looking forward to meeting you." A man with Down syndrome hurried from the main house, about 35, with Edward's fishing hat perched on his head. "Lucas's mommy!" he called out, waving enthusiastically. The name hit me like a physical blow. Lucas. No one had called my son that but Edward. Everyone else used his full name. "Honey, remember what we talked about?" Olivia said gently. "This is Mrs. Lee." "Mrs. Lee," he repeated, approaching with his hand extended. "I'm Jackson. I help with the horses and the garden." Mr. Edward was my best friend. "Nice to meet you, Jackson." "Would you like to see Lucas's special place?" he asked innocently. "I put fresh flowers there every Tuesday. Mr. Edward said flowers make Lucas happy in heaven. I couldn't breathe. Lucas's special place? Edward built a memorial, Olivia said softly. By the lake, where my 10-year-old son had slipped beneath the surface while I prepared his birthday lunch, the place that had destroyed me. I can't, I whispered, backing away, but Jackson took my hand. Don't be scared, Mrs. Lee. The lake is friendly now. It teaches children to swim so they don't go to heaven too early like Lucas did. Before I could process his words, I heard an engine. A black SUV approached. Marcus had followed me. Mom, he called, climbing out. What's going on here? Who are these people? Your father's legacy, Olivia said simply. And you must be Marcus. He spoke of you often. This place was supposed to be abandoned. Who gave you permission to be here? Jackson stepped behind me, nervous. Your father did, Olivia replied firmly. For the past 30 years. That's impossible, Marcus snapped. My father never mentioned any of this. Because he promised your mother he wouldn't, Olivia replied calmly. He kept 2 promises, to never leave those in need, and to never hurt Helen with memories of this place. I found my voice. You said you've been waiting for me. How did you know I'd come? Edward knew you would. Eventually, after he was gone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a key ring. He left instructions. There are things he wanted you to see. Marcus stepped forward. This property is being sold. These people need to be evicted immediately. Marcus, please, I said. Let's at least understand what's happening here. What's happening is trespassing, Mom. Jackson spoke up. Mr. Edwards said we could stay forever. He promised. My father has been dead for 6 months, Marcus countered, and he didn't own this place alone. Yes, Olivia said, which is why we've been waiting. Edward knew this day would come. A young woman approached, carrying a toddler, military posture, weary eyes. Everything okay, Liv? Fine, Jasmine. This is Mrs. Lee and her son. They're just visiting. You live here? I asked her directly. She nodded. 2 years now, since Rick, my husband, Afghanistan. The VA wasn't... Her words trailed off. Mom, we should discuss this privately, Marcus said tersely. Mrs. Lee, perhaps you'd like to see the house? Olivia suggested. I'll come with you, Marcus insisted. Actually, I'd like a few minutes alone with Olivia. His eyebrows shot up. Mom, we don't know who these people are. They're people Edward knew. That's enough for now. As Marcus retreated to his car, I followed Olivia toward the house, Jackson trailing behind us. Each step up the familiar porch sent memories washing over me. The layout inside was the same, but the furnishings were different. The living room held desks with computers. A whiteboard displayed duty rosters and schedules. This is our office now, Olivia explained. We had to repurpose some spaces as we grew. How many people live here? I managed to ask. Currently 47. 18 veterans, 8 women from domestic situations with 11 children between them, Jackson and his mother, and a family of 6 from Afghanistan. 47, I echoed. And Edward knew them all? He knew everyone who ever stayed here. The kitchen table held children's drawings. One caught my eye. Stick figures around a blue circle. The words Lucas's Water in a child's handwriting. What is Lucas's Water? I asked, my throat tightening. The swim-in place, Jackson said, where children learn not to drown. I put flowers there every Tuesday because that's when Lucas went to heaven. The room swayed. Olivia quickly pulled out a chair. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lee. We should have waited. Show me everything, I interrupted. Olivia led me upstairs to what had been our bedroom, now her quarters. She removed a wooden box from a bookshelf. Edward left this for you. He made me promise to give it to you first. The box was hand-carved with Helen inlaid in mother of pearl. Inside lay an envelope with my name and hundreds of sealed letters beneath it, each dated meticulously. The envelope contained a single page in Edward's distinctive handwriting. My dearest Helen, if you're reading this, I've left this world, and you found your way back to the ranch. I've played this moment in my mind thousands of times, wondering which would come first, my courage to tell you the truth or my death. It seems death won that race. I've kept secrets from you. Not affairs or hidden vices, but a different life, one I built alongside our life in Denver. A life where Lucas's memory serves as foundation rather than wound. I couldn't sell this land after we lost him. Couldn't bear the thought of strangers living where his laughter had filled every room. But neither could I leave it to decay. So I came back, first to grieve alone, then to rebuild, then to repurpose. What started with one homeless veteran seeking shelter in our barn has become something I never imagined. A community. I've written you a letter every month for 30 years explaining everything. I never sent them because I feared reopening your wounds. Perhaps that was cowardice disguised as protection. Forgive me, Helen girl, for my secrets, for my silence, for leaving this burden to you. But please, before you decide the fate of this place, see what it has become. I've loved you completely, even in my duplicity. Always, Edward. I looked up at Olivia, tears streaming down my face. You knew? All this time? For 15 years, she said softly. Since Edward found me sleeping in a church after I left the convent. He brought me here, showed me what he'd built, and asked me to help run it. While I knew nothing, I whispered, because he loved you too much to make you remember. Are you ready to see what Lucas's death helped create? She asked gently. Through my tears, I nodded. It was time to face the lake. The path hadn't changed, still a gentle slope through cottonwood trees. But there were new additions, benches, flower gardens, and safety signs with bright yellow lettering. Edward installed those after the first families with children came, Olivia explained. No child is ever allowed at the lake without an adult. Not after Lucas. I stopped. You speak his name so easily. Edward spoke of him often. All the children here know Lucas's story. I haven't said his name out loud in years, I admitted. It hurts too much. The trees thinned, and suddenly the lake stretched before us. Smaller than in my nightmares, but no less menacing. But my eyes were drawn to what hadn't been there before. A wooden deck extending over the water with railings, a roped-off swimming area, and at the water's edge, a stone memorial where Jackson was arranging wildflowers. I approached slowly, my heartbeat thundering. The memorial was simple but beautiful, a granite stone with a bronze plaque. Lucas Edward Lee, 1975 to 1985. For every life saved here, his spirit soars higher. Below was a second smaller plaque. 47 children have learned to swim safely here. Not one has been lost. My knees gave way, and I sank onto a garden bench, tears blurring my vision. 47 children? I whispered. Olivia nodded. Edward started teaching swimming lessons 15 years ago. Every child who lives here must learn. He hired certified instructors, built the safe swimming area, installed rescue equipment. She hesitated before adding, Your grandson was one of them. My head snapped up. What? Sarah's boy Ethan. When he was 7, he came close to drowning at a friend's pool party. Sarah mentioned it during a Sunday dinner. Edward paid for Ethan's lessons anonymously. He drove 3 hours every Saturday for 6 weeks to secretly watch from his car. I shook my head in disbelief. Sarah never knew. Jackson approached, beaming with pride at his flower arrangement. Pretty for Lucas, yes? Yellow was his favorite, Mr. Edward told me. Yellow had indeed been Lucas's favorite color. His bedroom had been painted sunflower yellow. It's beautiful, Jackson, I managed. I stared at the lake, the place I'd demonized for 3 decades, the place where I'd lost everything. Except I hadn't lost everything. I'd lost Lucas, but I'd still had Edward, Marcus, Sarah, and Tyler. Meanwhile, Edward had been transforming our tragedy into something miraculous. While I'd been drowning in grief, he'd been teaching children to swim. Why didn't he tell me? I asked. The first year, he came to grieve alone, found a homeless veteran sleeping in your barn, a man named Calvin Winters. Then another veteran came, and another. She sat beside me. 5 years in, there were 12 people living here. Edward wanted to tell you then. He drove all the way to Denver with photos, plans to show you how he was healing by helping others. What happened? He saw you laughing with friends outside a restaurant. Said it was the first time he'd seen you truly happy since Lucas died. Couldn't bear to reopen the wound. Drove back here and built the first cabin instead. Each time Edward convinced himself you were ready, something would happen. A panic attack when someone mentioned Montana. Your refusal to let Lucas's photographs be displayed. Your nightmares that still came every year on his birthday. 10 years ago, when the ranch was thriving with over 30 residents, Edward finally wrote you a long letter explaining everything. He drove to Denver, determined to deliver it personally. What stopped him? He found you in Lucas's room, the room you kept exactly as it was when he died. You were holding his teddy bear, crying. It was the anniversary. I remembered that day clearly. I thought I was alone, that Edward was at a medical conference in Chicago. After that, Olivia said, he created the trust, made legal arrangements for the ranch to continue without him, decided that his 2 worlds would remain separate until he died, I finished. She nodded. He loved you too much to break your heart twice. A little girl with copper-red hair called from up the path. Miss Olivia, Mom says dinner needs checking. Be right there, Amy. Olivia turned to me. Edward's last project. Amy's father was a Marine, died in Iraq. Her mother couldn't afford housing. They came here 6 months before Edward passed. As if summoned, a dozen more people appeared, heading toward the lake for what was clearly a regular ritual. Olivia stood. It's swimming lesson time. Every day at 4. Would you like to watch? I stared at the lake, at Lucas's memorial, at the children approaching with towels and smiles. I'll stay. I need to see. The swimming lesson was both beautiful and excruciating to watch. A certified instructor, a former Olympic hopeful named Carlos who'd lost a leg in Afghanistan, led 8 children through their paces in the roped-off area. We teach the Franklin method, Olivia said as we watched. Edward researched every swimming program before choosing it. Lowest drowning statistics of any technique. I noticed the safety systems. An instructor in the water, a spotter on deck with a life ring, another adult in a kayak. No child was more than an arm's length from an instructor. Lucas had died because there'd been no system. Just a boy who'd slipped away while parents prepared his birthday surprise. One moment of inattention that shattered 3 lives. When the lesson ended, Amy paused before us. Did you see me, Miss Olivia? I can float on my back now. That's wonderful, honey, Olivia replied with pride. Amy turned to me. Are you a new grandma here? My grandma's in heaven with my dad. Her mother hurried over. Amy, don't bother Mrs. Lee. I'm Rebecca, Amy's mom. It's all right, I assured her. And yes, Amy, I suppose I am new here. The child beamed. Will you watch me swim tomorrow, too? Something twisted in my heart. Pain, yes, but something else, too. I'd like that, I heard myself say. Olivia showed me the rest of the ranch. Cabins housing families, the greenhouse providing year-round vegetables, workshops for skills training. Edward sold the north parcel last year, she said, the part with mineral rights. Use the money to expand our sustainability projects. I stopped walking. He sold part of the ranch? For how much? Olivia hesitated. $3 million. What did he tell me about this money? He didn't deposit it in your joint accounts. He created the Lee Ranch Trust and funded it with the proceeds. $3 million. Hidden from me, from our children. Spent on strangers while Marcus struggled to pay for his son's college tuition. While Sarah worried about medical bills. While Tyler battled his demons. Show me the documentation, I said, my voice harder than intended. Everything. Olivia led me to Edward's study off the main hallway. His medical reference books lined the shelves alongside Louis L'Amour novels. His guilty pleasure. On the wall hung Lucas's first-grade photo. He kept this here? He kept all the family photos here. Said it was his heart room. She unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. These are the trust documents, property records, and financial statements. And these are his diaries. 30 years' worth. I opened the first journal, dated 1 month after we'd moved to Denver. Came back to the ranch today. Couldn't sell it. Couldn't bear strangers living where Lucas's laughter once echoed. Helen doesn't know. First secret I've ever kept from her. But how do I tell her I need this place she cannot bear to remember? Slept in Lucas's room. Found his toy soldier under the bed. Cried until sunrise. 3 months later. Fixed the roof on the barn. Started clearing debris. Gives my hands something to do while my heart still searches for answers. Helen thinks I'm at a medical conference in Seattle. Hate lying to her, but she's sleeping through the night now in Denver. My coming here would undo all that healing. A year after Lucas's death. Found a man sleeping in the barn today. Calvin Winters, Vietnam vet. No home, no family. Eyes like I've seen in the mirror. Haunted. Offered him dinner. He asked if he could stay. Said yes before I even thought about it. Feels right having another soul here. The ranch was never meant to be empty. 5 years later. 12 people living here now. Calvin's brought others. All veterans, all homeless. Good men fallen on hard times. Should tell Helen. Drove to Denver intending to. Saw her laughing with friends outside that restaurant she loves. First real laughter I've seen since Lucas. Couldn't bear to reopen the wound. Came back and started building a proper cabin instead. 10 years after, met Olivia Santos today. Former nun who left her order after reporting abuse. Found her sleeping in St. Michael's Church. Something about her reminded me of Helen. That same quiet strength. Offered her the teaching position for the children. When she saw the ranch, what we've built, she cried. Said she'd found her true calling after all. Think I have too. I flipped to the final journal, entries from last year. Doctor says my heart is failing. 6 months, maybe less. Haven't told Helen. Can't bear to see the fear in her eyes. Need to secure the ranch's future. The trust is nearly ready. Olivia will take over completely. Sold the north parcel to Miller Mining. $3 million. Told Helen I was at a cardiology conference in Houston. More lies to protect her. Use the money to build permanent housing for the veterans. Install the solar system. Upgrade the greenhouse. Purchase medical equipment. The ranch will be self-sustaining now. My legacy to Lucas, transforming the place of his death into a sanctuary of life. The final entry, 2 weeks before his heart attack. Made video for Helen today out by Lucas's memorial. Tried to explain everything. 47 children have learned to swim here now. 47 lives potentially saved. One for each year Lucas would have lived if I'd watched him more carefully that day. My penance. My redemption. Hoping someday Helen will understand why I kept this from her, why I built this secret life. Not for lack of love, because of its abundance. The ranch is ready. I am ready. But I fear I'm leaving her with an impossible burden. The truth. I closed the journal as car doors slammed outside. Marcus had returned with Sarah and Tyler, all three of my surviving children, ready to sell their brother's legacy. This is absurd, Marcus's voice carried through the window. Squatters' rights aren't a thing anymore, especially when the actual owners are right here. I stepped onto the porch. My three children stood confronting Olivia, who maintained her calm. As I've explained, Mr. Lee, this property is held in trust, she was saying. Your mother is the one you should be speaking with. Three heads turned toward me. Sarah rushed forward. Mom, what have these people been telling you? Are you okay? I'm fine, I said, surprised by my steadiness. And they're not these people, Sarah. They're residents of Lee Ranch. Lee Ranch hasn't existed for 30 years, Marcus retorted. This is just land we own that apparently has been colonized by strangers. Edward's diary says otherwise, I replied. He's been coming here monthly since Lucas died, building something extraordinary. Dad? Tyler spoke for the first time, confusion evident in his face. Not running it, Olivia interjected quietly. Creating it, funding it, loving it. And lying about it, Marcus snapped. He lied to all of us for decades. He did, I acknowledged. To protect me, to preserve Lucas's memory. Lucas has been gone 30 years, Sarah said, her voice softening. We all loved him, Mom, but this is madness. Dad hiding millions of dollars to fund some personal charity project. $3 million to be exact, I said, from the sale of the north parcel last year. Marcus's face darkened. $3 million? I asked Dad for help with Ethan's college tuition last spring. He said things were tight. And my medical bills after Nathan's layoff, Sarah added. He suggested payment plans. Tyler, still silent, watched the activity around the ranch. Jackson waved excitedly when he spotted us. I want to see everything, I declared. Before we discuss the future of this place, I need to understand what Edward built. Mom, the mining company representative is meeting us here tomorrow, Marcus protested. $25 million. That's over $6 million each for us. One day, Marcus. I'm asking for 1 day to learn the truth about your father's life. Marcus sighed in defeat. Fine. 1 day. Then we talk terms. Sarah looked less convinced. I'm calling Nathan. He should review these supposed trust documents. Tyler, will you stay? I asked. My youngest nodded, still watching Jackson, who was hurrying toward us with a framed photograph. Mrs. Lee, I found Lucas's picture. He thrust it towards me. Lucas on his 7th birthday, gap-toothed smile beaming as he proudly displayed his new fishing rod. Where did you get this? I whispered. Mr. Edwards' special room. He showed me all the pictures. Said I needed to know Lucas because we would have been friends. Jackson's innocent expression clouded. These people are mad. Are they making you leave us? No one's leaving yet, Jackson, I assured him. We're just talking. Good, because you need to see the horses and the school and Calvin's wood shop. And Eleanor makes the best apple pie on Thursdays. Tyler stepped forward, extending his hand to Jackson. I'd like to see the horses. I'm Tyler, Mrs. Lee's son. Jackson's face lit up. Lucas's brother. Mr. Edwards said you were good with horses when you were little. A shadow crossed Tyler's face. Did he? He said softly. Said you could whisper to them, make the scared ones calm. Jackson took Tyler's hand and pulled him toward the stables. We have a new mayor. She's scared of everything. Maybe you can help." Tyler glanced back at me, something vulnerable in his eyes. "Go," I encouraged him. "I'd like to know what else your father said about you." As they walked away, Marcus shook his head. "Unbelievable. They've got plants everywhere, tugging at heartstrings." "Or perhaps your father left more of himself here than he did in Denver," I replied. "I need to see it all, Marcus. I'm not signing anything tomorrow until I know exactly what I'd be destroying." Sarah's phone rang. Nathan, no doubt. She stepped away to answer. "Mom, be reasonable." Marcus lowered his voice. "Even if Dad did build this place, even if he did care about these people, they're strangers. We're his family." "Are we?" I challenged, clutching Lucas's photograph. "How much time did you spend with your father in the last year, Marcus? How many times did you call just to talk, not to ask for something?" The question struck home. Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "No, it isn't," I agreed. "Just as it wasn't fair that your father kept this place secret from us. But I'm beginning to understand why." I turned to Olivia. "Show me everything, starting with how Edward funded this place before last year's mineral sale." Marcus made a final attempt. "The trust documents might not even be legal. Dad wasn't a lawyer." "No," came a new voice from behind us. "But I am, and they're ironclad." We turned to see an elderly man in a wheelchair approaching, pushed by a middle-aged woman. "Calvin Winters," he introduced himself. "Original resident and legal counsel for the Lee Ranch Trust since its inception 15 years ago." "You're a lawyer?" Marcus asked incredulously. The old man's eyes crinkled. "Vietnam before that, Harvard Law after, alcoholism and PTSD in between. Your father found me sleeping in his barn and gave me purpose again." "Dinner's in 30 minutes, the woman pushing Calvin's wheelchair announced. "We'd be honored if the Lee family would join us." Olivia turned to me. "Eleanor makes the meal assignments. She was the head chef at the Grand Hotel in Billings before her arthritis forced retirement." Jackson's mother. "We'll stay for dinner," I decided, looking pointedly at my children. "All of us." Sarah rejoined us, phone clutched tightly. "Nathan says we should document everything." "That's a start," I agreed. "To understand what your father valued enough to hide from us for 30 years. As we walked toward the dining hall, converted from our old barn, I noticed Tyler in the distance, standing quietly beside a nervous mare, his hand gently stroking her neck, while Jackson watched in awe. For the first time since Edward's death, I felt something shift inside me. Not healing, not yet, but possibility. And in my hand, Lucas smiled from his photograph, eternally 10 years old, forever frozen in time at the place I'd run from. And Edward had transformed. The dining hall stunned me. Our old barn had been transformed into a warm space with long tables, a stone fireplace, and walls covered with children's artwork. Wooden beams stretched overhead, strung with twinkling lights. "Edward designed it himself," Olivia explained. "Said every family deserves a proper dinner table." A dozen round tables filled the space, each set with mismatched but clean plates. Residents were gathering, adults helping children get settled, teenagers distributing water pitchers. Marcus, Sarah, and I stood awkwardly just inside the entrance. Tyler had yet to return from the stables. A tiny woman with snow-white hair approached us, leaning heavily on a cane. "You must be Helen," she said, her rheumatoid-twisted hands extending toward mine. "I'm Eleanor. Edward spoke of you constantly." I took her gnarled fingers gently. "You're Jackson's mother?" "Yes," she smiled, revealing dimples that matched her son's. "And Edward's second cousin, though he didn't know that when he found us. Only discovered the connection when I mentioned my maiden name was Lee. from the Kentucky Lees, not the Montana ones. Edward never told me. Probably thought it didn't matter. Family is who you choose, not just who shares your blood. She gestured toward a table near the fireplace. That's our family table. Edward always sat there. Would you join me? Before I could answer, Marcus stepped forward. Eleanor, I understand you've lived here for some time, but you should know this property is being sold tomorrow. Eleanor's smile never faltered. Is that so? Well, perhaps after dinner you'll feel differently. Food has a way of changing perspectives. She turned back to me. Edward's chair has been empty 6 months now. Would do my heart good to see it filled again. I'd be honored, I told her, ignoring Marcus's disapproving look. We followed Eleanor to the table where Jackson was already seated, telling a teenage girl about Lucas's brother who could talk to horses. Tyler appeared moments later, sliding into the chair beside Jackson, a soft smile playing on his lips, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since Edward's funeral. The mare's name is Whisper, he told me, rescued from an abusive racing stable. She's going to be okay with time and patience. Time and patience, Eleanor echoed. Edward's prescription for all wounds, animal or human. A bell rang softly, and the dining hall quieted. Olivia stood at the front, hands clasped. As always, before we eat, we share our gratitudes. Tonight is special as we welcome Dr. Lee's family. Helen, Marcus, Sarah, and Tyler have come to learn about the ranch. Let's show them the same kindness Edward showed each of us. One by one, people around the room shared brief thanksgivings. A veteran with a prosthetic leg thanked the community for helping with his physical therapy. A young mother expressed gratitude for childcare that allowed her to attend online classes. When they finished, Jackson jumped up excitedly. I'm grateful Lucas's mommy came to see us, and his brother can talk to Whisper. All eyes turned expectantly toward me. I hadn't prepared for this ritual, had no gratitude readily available amid the revelations, but looking around at these faces, people whose lives Edward had touched while I remained oblivious, I found words. I'm grateful to discover that while I was preserving Lucas's memory by keeping it locked away, Edward was honoring it by creating this. My voice caught. Thank you for showing me another way to remember my son. A soft murmur of approval rippled through the room. Even Sarah looked moved, though she quickly masked it when she caught Marcus watching her. Eleanor squeezed my hand as dinner was served. Hearty vegetable stew, fresh bread, and salad greens from the greenhouse. As we ate, residents stopped by our table to introduce themselves. Calvin shared stories of the ranch's early days. A former teacher described the educational program for children who struggled in traditional schools. Ahmad, who had been an interpreter for American forces in Afghanistan, expressed his gratitude for the sanctuary provided to his family. Edward paid for our immigration lawyer, Ahmed said softly. When the system failed us, he created a place for us to belong. Marcus remained silent throughout these interactions, though I noticed him watching a young boy showing a drawing to his mother, a stick figure family standing before a simple house, home, printed in wobbly letters above it. Sarah asked pointed questions about the ranch's legal structure, funding mechanisms, and sustainability plans. Calvin answered each inquiry with professional precision. The mineral rights sale was legally structured as a charitable donation, he explained. The proceeds went directly into the trust's endowment fund. Tax avoidance, Sarah muttered. Tax planning, Calvin corrected mildly. Perfectly legal and ethical. Tyler barely spoke, content to listen to Jackson's excited chatter about horses, swimming, and art therapy classes. I watched my youngest son carefully. Of my 3 children, Tyler had struggled most after Lucas's death. Now, watching him with Jackson, I glimpsed the healing that had eluded him. As dessert, Eleanor's apple pie was served,
Amy approached our table with a handmade card. "I made this for you," she said shyly, placing it before me. "Miss Olivia said you're sad because Dr. Edward went to heaven." The card featured a childish drawing of a sun over a lake. Inside, "When we are sad, Dr. Edward said to look for helpers. We can be your helpers now." Edward's favorite Mr. Rogers quote had become his life philosophy. "Thank you, Amy," I managed. "It's beautiful." As she skipped away, Marcus finally broke his silence. "This is all very touching, Mom. But these good works don't change the fact that Dad lied to us for decades, hid money, created this elaborate double life." "While you were weekending in Aspen," Tyler said suddenly, his voice unusually sharp. "While Sarah was climbing the corporate ladder, while I was in and out of rehab." Marcus flushed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Tyler challenged. "When's the last time you asked Dad about his life? Not about investments or advice or loans, just about him." An uncomfortable silence fell over our table. Eleanor patted my hand gently. "Family," she said softly. "Always the most complicated love story." As dinner concluded, residents began their evening routines. Some cleared tables, others supervised children's homework. Still others gathered for what appeared to be a support group meeting. "Typical evening at Lee Ranch," Olivia explained. "Everyone contributes according to their abilities. Everyone's needs are met according to their circumstances." "Sounds like communism," Marcus muttered. "Sounds like family," I countered. And as I watched this community, these strangers united by Edward's vision, I realized they knew a side of my husband I'd never seen. Night fell over the ranch, stars emerging in the vast Montana sky. Olivia had offered us accommodations, Marcus and Sarah in guest rooms in the main house, Tyler bunking in the stables at Jackson's invitation, and me in Edward's quarters above his office. The space was undeniably Edward's, Spartan but thoughtful, a twin bed with flannel sheets, bookshelves lined with medical journals and westerns, a small desk beneath a window overlooking the property, and photographs, dozens in simple frames covering one entire wall. There he was with Calvin before a half-built cabin, Edward kneeling beside Jackson on a fishing dock, Edward in a Santa hat, distributing presents to beaming children. Not a single photograph of me or Marcus, Sarah or Tyler. Those lived in his Denver office. He had kept his worlds completely separate. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Sarah stood in the doorway, her professional demeanor softened by exhaustion. "May I come in?" I nodded, patting the space beside me. She sat, her eyes immediately drawn to the photo wall. "It's surreal," she said after a moment, "like discovering Dad had another family." "He did in a way," I acknowledged, "but not the kind you're thinking." "Nathan's reviewed the trust documents," she continued. "They're legitimate. Dad created an irrevocable charitable trust 15 years ago. We can't sell it, Mom, not without a protracted legal battle that we'd likely lose." I absorbed this information, surprised to find myself relieved. "What about the mineral rights offer?" "The trust owns those too, though there's a clause allowing limited extraction with environmental safeguards." She sighed. "Nothing like the scorched earth approach the mining company wants." "So no 25 million windfall?" "No." She glanced at me. "Marcus is taking it hard. He's been counting on that money to expand his business." I thought of Marcus's luxury home in Cherry Creek, his vacation property in Vail, his children in private schools. "He's done well enough without it." "We all have," Sarah admitted. "Even Tyler when he's sober." We sat in companionable silence, studying the evidence of Edward's parallel life. "Why didn't he tell us?" Sarah finally asked, the lawyer facade cracking to reveal the hurt daughter beneath. "Did he think we wouldn't understand?" I think he feared what knowing would do to me, I said slowly. And once that pattern of secrecy was established, it became easier to maintain than to break.
But all that money, Mom. $3 million that could have helped his own family. I gestured toward the photos. These people became his family too, Sarah. Look at their faces. Really look. She studied the images more carefully. They all look at him like he saved them, I finished, because he did. Another knock, and Marcus appeared, his face tight with barely controlled anger. Well, Sarah's confirmed it. Dad screwed us all with his secret charity project. Marcus, I chided, that's not fair. Fair? What's not fair is discovering your father led a double life for 30 years. What's not fair is finding out the inheritance you counted on doesn't exist because he gave it all away to strangers. They're not strangers to him, Sarah said quietly. I don't care, he snapped. He lied to us, Mom, for decades. How can you be so calm about this? Before I could respond, Tyler appeared behind Marcus, his expression unusually serene. Because she understands what you don't, Marcus. Dad didn't do this against us. He did it for Lucas. Don't bring Lucas into this, Marcus warned. This has nothing to do with him. It has everything to do with him, Tyler insisted. This whole place exists because of what happened to Lucas. It's Dad's way of making something good come from something terrible. He stepped into the room. Olivia showed me the video, Mom. The one Dad made at the memorial. What video? I asked. Dad recorded messages at Lucas's memorial for 30 years. There's one he made specifically for you. Marcus threw up his hands in disgust. More manipulative theatrics. It's Dad talking to Mom, Tyler said firmly. I think she deserves to hear him out. Sarah placed a gentle hand on my arm. You don't have to watch it now, Mom. Or ever. But I was already standing. Where is it? Tyler led us to Edward's office where Olivia waited with a tablet. I sat at Edward's desk, my surviving children gathering behind me as Olivia left discreetly. The video began with Edward's face filling the screen, clearly in his final months. Behind him stood Lucas's memorial, flower-bedecked as always. Helen, he began, his voice sending a shock through me. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you found your way back to the ranch. I've made hundreds of these videos over the years, talking to you, to Lucas, trying to explain what I couldn't say in person. But this one's the truth I should have told you 30 years ago. Edward shifted, revealing more of the lake behind him. Helen, girl, the day Lucas drowned wasn't your fault. It was mine. I gasped, feeling my children tense behind me. I know you've carried this guilt for decades, believing that if you hadn't been preparing his surprise birthday cake, if you'd been watching him instead. But the truth is, I told him he could go to the lake that morning. My hands flew to my mouth. He asked if he could try fishing with his new rod. I said yes, told him to stay on the dock. I promised I'd join him in 15 minutes after I fixed the tractor, but I got caught up in the repair, lost track of time. You were in the kitchen, thinking he was with me. I was in the barn, thinking he was still waiting for me. Edward wiped a tear. By the time either of us realized he'd gone to the water alone, I felt Sarah's hand on my shoulder, squeezing tightly. I couldn't tell you then. You were so broken, Helen, and I was a coward. Watching you blame yourself was easier than admitting I'd given permission. As the years passed, it became impossible to confess. How do you tell someone you've let them carry undeserved guilt for decades? Edward took a deep breath. So instead I tried to atone, to make Lucas's death mean something. Every child taught to swim safely, every veteran given purpose, every family sheltered. They're all part of our son's legacy. The boy who loved everyone, who never met a stranger, who wanted to save every stray animal we found. He lives on in this place, in ways I couldn't explain without revealing my own culpability. Behind me, Marcus made a soft, wounded sound.
I don't know if you can forgive me, Edward continued, for Lucas, for the lies, for creating this place without you. But I hope someday you'll see that in my broken way, I was trying to honor both our son and you, the woman who taught me that love is about lifting others up. He leaned closer to the camera. The trust will protect the ranch after I'm gone. The community can continue without me, but it would flourish with your heart guiding it, Helen. If you can find it in yourself to forgive me, to embrace what grew from our greatest loss, there's room for you here. Room for all our family, if they choose it. Edward smiled sadly. I've loved you completely, Helen Lee, even in my deception, and Lucas would be so proud of the lives saved in his name. The screen went dark. None of us moved or spoke. Then Marcus turned abruptly and left the room. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, followed him. Tyler remained, his hand resting gently on my back as 30 years of misplaced guilt washed over me. He knew, I whispered. All these years, he knew I blamed myself, and he let me, while he blamed himself. So he built all this to make amends, Tyler said quietly. I looked up at my youngest son, suddenly seeing him with new clarity. You're not angry about the money. Tyler shook his head. I never cared about that. And after seeing this place, understanding what Dad created, I'm proud of him, Mom. For the first time since Lucas died, I feel like our family did something that matters. As the night deepened around the ranch, Lucas's ranch, Edward's vision, I began to understand the legacy my husband had left, not just for strangers, but for us. A way to transform our family's greatest tragedy into purpose. If only I could find the strength to accept it. Dawn broke over the ranch with a spectacular riot of colors, purples and oranges streaking across the vast Montana sky. I'd barely slept, spending hours reading through Edward's journals after watching his confession video. Each entry revealed another piece of the intricate mosaic he'd created in our son's memory. I stood now on the porch of the main house, coffee mug warming my hands, watching the ranch come alive. Veterans headed to the greenhouse. Children gathered for breakfast before school. A group of women left for their jobs in nearby towns, carpooling in one of the ranch's vehicles. This well-oiled community had functioned without me, without my knowledge, for decades.
Early riser like your husband, came Eleanor's voice as she joined me, moving slowly with her cane. Edward always said sunrise over the mountains was God's daily reminder that beauty follows darkness. That sounds like him, I agreed, making room for her on the bench. He was always the optimist in our marriage. Yet he carried such guilt, Eleanor said softly. Sometimes when he thought no one was watching, the weight of it showed in his eyes. I never saw it, I admitted. How did I not see it? Because he didn't want you to. Edward was skilled at compartmentalizing. Doctor mode, husband mode, ranch mode, each separate and distinct. 3 decades of deception, I mused. I keep trying to be angry, but all I feel is grief. For the shared healing you might have had, Eleanor supplied. For the years you could have been part of this. A small figure bounded across the yard, Jackson heading for the stables where Tyler had spent the night. My youngest son emerged, hair tousled from sleep, smiling at Jackson's enthusiasm. Your son belongs here, Eleanor said, following my gaze. I've never seen Jackson connect with someone so quickly, not since Edward. I thought of Tyler's struggles over the years, the rehab stints, the depression, the difficulty maintaining relationships. Tyler has always been searching for something, purpose. Maybe we have that in abundance here, Eleanor replied. What we lack are enough hands to share the load. Before I could respond, Marcus's BMW pulled into the yard. He'd left last night after the video, driving to a hotel in the nearest town. Now he returned, his expression unreadable as he approached the porch. "Morning," he said stiffly. "Sarah's on her way. We need to talk, Mom." Eleanor took the hint, rising slowly. "I'll leave you to your family business. But Helen, when you're ready, Olivia has something for you in Edward's office." After she left, Marcus sat beside me, exhaling heavily. "I didn't sleep last night." "Neither did I admitted. I kept thinking about Dad's video, about Lucas, about all of this." He gestured vaguely toward the bustling ranch. "I was 12 when Lucas died. Old enough to understand, but too young to process it properly. I remember deciding someone had to be the strong one for you and Dad." "You were," I said softly. "So responsible. So adult-like overnight." "I resented it," he confessed. "Resented losing both Lucas and my childhood in one day. Resented Dad for falling apart when I needed him most." I'd never heard Marcus speak this way. My eldest had always been the practical one, the unemotional one, the successful one who never looked back. And then last night, watching Dad confess, seeing his guilt, his pain, it was like meeting a stranger. The father I knew would never have kept such secrets. "None of us knew him completely," I said. "Not even me." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The money still bothers me, Mom. $3 million given to strangers while his own family struggled. Sarah's medical debt after Nathan's layoff. Tyler's rehab costs. My business expansion loans." "We weren't struggling, Marcus," I corrected gently. "We were comfortable, privileged even. These people had nothing. They're not our responsibility." They were to Edward. And maybe that's what family really means, extending responsibility beyond blood. I studied my son's face, seeing the boy he'd been beneath the successful businessman he'd become. "Your father built something remarkable here, Marcus. Something that honors Lucas in ways I never could." Marcus looked away, watching as Tyler and Jackson led horses from the stable. "Dad's video mentioned there being room for all our family here. What did he mean by that?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I intend to find out." Sarah's car arrived, parking beside Marcus's. She emerged with her husband Nathan, both looking solemn. "We need to discuss the legal implications," she said without preamble as they joined us. "The trust is valid, but there may be ways to restructure it that benefit both the ranch and our family." "Always the lawyer," Marcus muttered. "Someone has to be practical," she retorted. $25 million is still on the table from the mining company if we can negotiate limited extraction rights that don't displace residents." "No," I interrupted, surprising myself with my certainty. "No mining, not yet. Not until I understand everything Edward built here." Nathan cleared his throat. "Mrs. Lee, with all due respect, the offer won't stay open indefinitely. The company has other options." "Then let them pursue those options," I said firmly. This land was Lucas's playground, Edward's sanctuary, and now home to dozens who have nowhere else. I won't rush into decisions that destroy any of that. Sarah and Nathan exchanged glances, clearly having expected a different response. "Olivia wants to see me," I continued, standing. "Something Edward left. Will you join me?" We found Olivia in Edward's office, a worn leather box on the desk before her. "These are the letters," she said simply, "one for each month for 30 years. Edward wrote them after every visit, but never sent them." 360 letters, Sarah calculated aloud. 362, Olivia corrected. He was very disciplined. I approached the box reverently, lifting the lid to reveal bundles of envelopes, each tied with string and labeled by year. "Have you read them?" I asked Olivia. No, she replied. They were for you alone. Edward was very clear about that. I selected the earliest bundle from the year after Lucas died. The first envelope was addressed in Edward's familiar handwriting. For Helen, when you're ready to know. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read aloud. My dearest Helen, I've just spent my first weekend back at the ranch since we left. I told you I was at a medical conference in Portland. Forgive the deception. I couldn't sell this place, Helen. Not where Lucas's spirit still feels so present. The lake haunts me as it does you, but somehow being here, facing it directly, brings a strange peace that eludes me in Denver. Today I repaired the dock where he used to fish. Tomorrow I'll clear the path to the meadow where he flew his kite. Small acts of remembrance that feel like prayer. A local veteran, Calvin Winters, has been sleeping in our barn. Instead of calling the sheriff, I've invited him to stay, to help with repairs. He has the same hollow look we do, Helen. The look of someone who has lost something irreplaceable. Perhaps that's why I let him stay, because he understands that some wounds never fully heal. They just become part of who you are. I want to tell you about this place, about how it feels both haunted and healing. But when I called home tonight and heard the lightness in your voice as you described your new teaching position, I couldn't bear to reopen wounds that are finally beginning to scab over. So I carry this secret for now, this small solace that helps me breathe when grief threatens to suffocate me. Perhaps someday we can share it. Until then, know that in this place where we lost our son, I am keeping his memory alive in the only way I know how, by helping others who are lost themselves. All my love. Edward. I looked up, tears blurring my vision. Marcus stood rigid, his expression conflicted. Sarah wiped her eyes discreetly. Nathan studied the floor, an outsider witnessing our family's raw exposure. There are hundreds more, Olivia said softly, documenting everything. The first veterans cabin, the greenhouse installation, the swimming program, Jackson and Eleanor's arrival, the trust formation. Edward recorded it all for you. He wanted me to know, I realized. Just not until he thought I could bear it. Or until he was gone and couldn't witness your pain, Marcus suggested, his voice rougher than usual. Either way, Sarah said, he left us a roadmap to his heart, to the life he led without us. I replaced the letter in its envelope, overcome by the magnitude of what lay before me. Hundreds of confessions, explanations, invitations to understand the husband I thought I'd known completely. There's more, Olivia said hesitantly. Edward left instructions for all of you, if you chose to embrace the ranch. What kind of instructions? Sarah asked, lawyer mode engaging. Opportunities, Olivia clarified. Ways each of you could be involved in the ranch's future if you wanted to be. He never assumed you would, but he hoped. I thought of Edward's words in the video. There's room for all our family here if they choose it. Show us, I said. As Olivia retrieved another folder from Edward's desk, I caught Tyler watching from the doorway, Jackson beside him. My youngest son's expression held something I hadn't seen in years, hope. And in that moment, I began to understand what Edward had always known, that healing doesn't come from running away from tragedy, but from transforming it into purpose. The question was whether our fractured family could find unity in continuing what Edward had begun, or whether his dual life would ultimately drive us further apart. Olivia opened the folder and removed several documents, each bearing one of our names. Edward prepared these during his final months, when his heart condition was worsening. He never told anyone about his diagnosis, not even me, until the very end. Another secret. How many had my husband carried to protect those he loved? He called these his legacy proposals, Olivia continued, handing each of us our designated envelope. Mine was thicker than the others. its weight significant in my trembling hands. Marcus tore his open immediately, scanning the contents with narrowed eyes. Sarah, ever the methodical one, carefully slid a finger beneath the flap, preserving the envelope as potential evidence. Tyler accepted his with reverence, but made no move to open it, watching his siblings' reactions instead. I broke the seal on mine, finding several pages covered in Edward's precise handwriting. The first page began simply, "Dearest Helen, if you're reading this, you've discovered Lee Ranch and all it encompasses. You've learned of my 3-decade deception or dedication, depending on your perspective. The question now is, what happens next? I've established legal protections for this community through the trust, ensuring it can continue without us, but it would thrive with Lee family involvement, not out of obligation, but out of choice. The choice to transform our family's greatest tragedy into its most meaningful legacy. For you, my beloved wife, I propose the role you were always meant for, community historian and heartkeeper. Your gift as a history teacher, your ability to help others connect to the past while building toward the future, these talents are desperately needed here. The children need to understand where they came from, to see where they might go. The veterans need their stories preserved with dignity, and Lucas's memory needs to be woven throughout, not as a ghost that haunts, but as the foundation that supports. Should you accept, the trust provides a modest salary and living quarters. Our old home restored to comfort, but preserved in essence. More importantly, it offers purpose for your retirement years and healing for your heart. The decision is entirely yours. You may choose to visit occasionally, to remain at a distance, or to embrace this place fully. All I ask is that you consider the possibility that in running from this land for 30 years, you may have been running from your own healing. With eternal love, Edward. Additional pages detailed practical matters, financial provisions, transitional assistance, even curriculum suggestions for historical programming. Edward had thought of everything, planning for a future he wouldn't live to see. I looked up to find Marcus standing abruptly, his proposal crumpled in his fist. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "What did yours say?" Sarah asked, her own pages held protectively against her chest. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Dad wants me to use my business acumen to establish sustainable revenue streams for the ranch. Suggested I relocate my investment firm's satellite office to Billings and serve as the trust's financial advisor. Even outlined expansion opportunities for ecotourism and therapeutic retreat services that could benefit both the community and provide professional fulfillment." He thought that far ahead. Sarah seemed impressed despite herself. "Oh, it gets better," Marcus continued. "He's offering matching funds from the trust for any investment I make in ranch enterprises. A partnership, he calls it, as if I'd uproot my entire life to manage his secret charity project." The bitterness in his voice didn't quite mask the underlying hurt. The son who'd built his own success, feeling his father had been planning a different future for him all along. "What about yours?" I asked Sarah gently. She swallowed hard. "Legal oversight. Dad suggests I establish a nonprofit law practice specializing in veterans' benefits, immigrant rights, and domestic violence protection, all issues affecting ranch residents." Her voice softened. "He writes that my passion for justice has always outweighed my desire for corporate success, even when you couldn't admit it to yourself." I saw the conflict in her eyes. The ambitious attorney who'd fought for partnership at her prestigious firm, suddenly confronted with an alternate vision of her professional identity. "Tyler," I prompted, noticing my youngest still clutching his unopened envelope. He shook his head. "I don't need to read it. I already know." "Know what?" Marcus demanded. "That Dad saw me clearly when the rest of you saw only my failures." Tyler's voice held no accusation, just simple truth. That he understood why I kept falling apart in the structured world you all navigated so easily. You don't know what he proposed, Sarah pointed out. Something with the horses, Tyler said confidently. Something that uses my empathy rather than treating it as a weakness. Something that acknowledges I've been looking for purpose since Lucas died. Olivia nodded slightly, confirming Tyler's intuition without revealing specifics. Marcus paced the small office, agitation evident in every movement. This is emotional manipulation from beyond the grave. Dad spent 30 years living a double life, and now he expects us to abandon our existing lives to continue his secret project. I have a family in Denver, a successful business, kids in schools they love. He doesn't expect anything, I corrected gently. He's offering possibilities. While leveraging guilt and sentimentality, Marcus retorted. Classic Dad, making emotional appeals seem like rational choices. Sarah studied her pages thoughtfully. The proposals are surprisingly practical, though. Dad researched the legal barriers to what he's suggesting for me. He's included contact information for organizations already interested in partnership. It's thorough. Of course it is, Marcus scoffed. Dad had 30 years to plan how to rope us into this place after he was gone. Or 30 years to understand what might bring each of us fulfillment, Tyler suggested quietly. Fulfillment we haven't found in the lives we've built. Marcus rounded on him. Speak for yourself. Some of us are perfectly fulfilled. Are you, Marcus? Tyler challenged, unusual confidence in his voice. Is that why you work 70 hours a week? Why you've been divorced twice? Why Ethan barely speaks to you despite living in your house? You little, Marcus began, stepping toward Tyler. That's enough, I interjected, standing between my sons. Edward gave us choices, not mandates. We each decide for ourselves. Including you, Mom? Sarah asked, her lawyer's perception homing in on my evasion. Have you decided? All eyes turned to me, my children, Olivia, even Nathan, who had remained a respectful observer to our family drama. I've spent 30 years running from this place, I said slowly, finding my way to truth with each word. Refusing to speak Lucas's name, keeping his room like a museum, flinching when Edward mentioned Montana. I took a deep breath. And none of it brought healing. None of it honored our son's life or made sense of his death. I gestured toward the window where ranch residents went about their morning routines. But this community has saved lives, given hope, created family for those without one, all in Lucas's name. So you're staying, Marcus concluded flatly. I'm considering it, I corrected. I want to read all Edward's letters first, understand everything he built here, then decide. And if we don't want to be part of this grand vision, Marcus pressed. Then that's your choice, I replied simply. Edward protected the ranch legally, regardless of our involvement. This place will continue with or without Lee family participation. The tension in the room was broken by Jackson appearing in the doorway. Tyler, the new horse is eating. You said you'd help brush her. Tyler smiled, tucking his still unopened envelope into his pocket. Come in, Jackson. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm staying. At least for a while. The rest of you can do whatever you want with Dad's proposals. But I found something here I've been searching for my whole adult life. After he left, Marcus shook his head in frustration. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Dad's created some fantasy world here that's sucking us in one by one. Or perhaps, Sarah suggested cautiously, he created something real in a world that often feels like fantasy. You too? Marcus looked betrayed. What happened to your partnership track, the Supreme Court ambitions? Sarah shrugged, a gesture so unlike my always certain daughter that it momentarily stunned me. I don't know, Marcus, but I do know I haven't been happy despite achieving everything I thought I wanted. Maybe Dad saw that when I couldn't. This is insane, Marcus sputtered. We're supposed to have careers and lives in Denver, not run off to play charity workers on a ranch in the middle of nowhere. Your father commuted for 30 years, Olivia observed quietly. Created impact in both worlds. Perhaps such balance is possible for all of you. Marcus stormed out, Nathan following after an apologetic glance toward Sarah. My daughter stayed, studying her father's proposal with new eyes. He knew me better than I thought, she admitted softly. How did he see what I've only recently begun to acknowledge to myself? Your father had a gift for seeing beneath surfaces, I replied, even while keeping his own depths hidden. Outside, I could see Tyler with Jackson by the stables, Marcus standing by his car with a phone pressed to his ear, and the daily life of Lee Ranch continuing around them. Lives Edward had saved, futures he had altered, all flowing from the devastating loss that had nearly destroyed our family. And for the first time in 30 years, I allowed myself to wonder if Lucas's death, while never making sense, might yet have meaning through this unexpected legacy. That afternoon, Olivia asked if I'd like to attend a ranch meeting. We have them weekly, she explained, to discuss challenges, address concerns, make group decisions. This might help you see the full picture, not just the beautiful parts, but the struggles too. I agreed, curious to see beyond the idyllic surface Edward's letters had presented. The meeting was held in the dining hall, chairs arranged in a large circle. About 30 adults attended, with Olivia facilitating. I sat beside Eleanor, watching the community dynamics unfold. First item, Olivia began consulting her notes. Financial update. A middle-aged man with a military bearing stood, distributing printed sheets. Winter utility costs were higher than projected. We're looking at a 15% shortfall in the operating budget for the quarter. I was surprised by the candor, the direct acknowledgement of financial strain. Options? Olivia asked the group. Various suggestions emerged. Delaying roof repairs on cabin 3, reducing propane usage, taking on additional contract work from local businesses. We could also reach out to Dr. Lee's contacts at the Veterans Hospital, suggested Calvin. Last year's partnership brought in substantial income. I've already called them, said the financial officer. They're facing budget cuts themselves. No contracts available this quarter. I watched as the group tackled the problem collaboratively, eventually developing a phased approach. Immediate conservation measures, reaching out to additional business partners, applying for a new grant Eleanor had identified. Then came resident updates. A single mother was struggling with childcare while attending nursing classes. A veteran was experiencing increased PTSD symptoms. 2 teenagers had been caught sneaking out at night. A refugee family was having difficulty navigating the local school system. For each issue, the community brainstormed solutions, scheduling adjustments, therapeutic interventions, appropriate consequences, advocacy efforts. Not perfect solutions, not immediate fixes, but thoughtful approaches that balanced individual needs with community resources. Last item, Olivia said. The Reed situation. Tension immediately rippled through the group. Eleanor leaned over to whisper, former resident, left under difficult circumstances last year, now making allegations. A woman I hadn't met before rose. Daniel Reed has been posting on social media again, claiming Edward misused trust funds for personal gain. He's approaching local media with his story. Murmurs of anger and concern filled the room. What's he saying specifically? Asked Calvin. That Edward used the trust to finance his own lifestyle. That residents were essentially unpaid laborers. That the mineral rights sale was fraudulent. Those are serious allegations, I said, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to me. Mrs. Lee, the woman acknowledged. I'm Claire, The ranch's communications coordinator. Yes, they're serious and completely false, but they're gaining traction online because people love a scandal. Who is this Reed person? I asked. Calvin answered. Daniel joined us 4 years ago. Iraq veteran, severe PTSD, alcohol issues. Edward took him in, got him treatment, even paid for his certification as an electrician. When he was stable, he started helping with our solar installation project. What happened? The group exchanged glances. He relapsed, Olivia said carefully. Became verbally abusive to other residents. Edward gave him multiple chances, arranged additional treatment. Finally, when he threatened a child here, Edward had to ask him to leave. He was furious, added Claire. Swore he'd take down the whole operation. We tried to maintain contact, offer outpatient support, but he refused. I absorbed this information, evidence of the complicated reality beneath the surface harmony. Not everyone stayed, not everyone healed. Edward had faced opposition, made difficult decisions, created enemies. What can we do? Asked a young veteran. Legally, we have options, Calvin said. Cease and desist letters, potential defamation suit, but that might escalate tensions and generate more publicity. And practically speaking, Claire added, we don't have the resources for a prolonged legal battle. The community debated various approaches, direct outreach to Reed, preemptive statements to media, mobilizing supportive former residents to counter the narrative. They settled on a multi-pronged approach, assigning responsibilities to different team members. As the meeting concluded, I had a fuller picture of Lee Ranch. Not a utopia, but a real community with real challenges. Financial constraints, interpersonal conflicts, external threats. All the complexities Edward had navigated for years without my knowledge or support. We wanted you to see this, Olivia said afterward. Not just the finished cabins and successful programs, but the daily work of keeping this place going. The hard decisions Edward had to make, the obstacles he faced. I appreciate that, I told her. It helps me understand better. And it's important you know this before tomorrow, she added. Tomorrow? The mining company representatives will be here. They've requested a meeting with the Lee family and trust administrators. They're not giving up on those mineral rights. That evening, Sarah, Tyler, and I gathered on the porch of the main house, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Marcus had returned to his hotel, claiming business calls, though I suspected he wanted distance from the emotional pull of the ranch. Did you know about this Reed person? Sarah asked. The one making allegations? Tyler shook his head. Olivia mentioned some former residents caused trouble, but she didn't name names. I've done some digging, Sarah said, her phone in hand. His claims aren't getting much traction beyond a few veterans' forums, but they're troubling. Allegations of financial impropriety could trigger investigations, regardless of merit. Edward kept meticulous records, I reminded her. Calvin showed me the audit trail this afternoon. Everything is documented. Still, Sarah sighed, perception matters. A drawn-out public dispute could damage the ranch's reputation, affect funding opportunities. Another challenge to add to the list, Tyler observed. Money problems, angry ex-residents, mining company pressure. I'm starting to understand why Dad kept this place separate from us. He was protecting us from the complications. Or protecting himself from our judgment, Sarah suggested. Would we have supported his choices? The risks he took? The resources he committed? I considered the question honestly. Probably not. At least I wouldn't have 30 years ago. I wanted to leave this place behind completely. And now? Tyler asked quietly. I gazed out at the thriving community Edward had built, the legacy of our shared tragedy. Now I think I understand what he was trying to do, I said slowly. He couldn't save Lucas, so he tried to save everyone else he could. We sat in contemplative silence as twilight deepened. Finally, Tyler pulled his unopened envelope from his pocket. "Guess I should actually read this," he said with a small smile. He broke the seal and unfolded the pages. As his eyes scanned the contents, his expression shifted from curiosity to wonder. "Well?" Sarah prompted. "It's exactly what I expected, but more detailed," Tyler said. "Dad proposes I develop and lead an equine therapy program for trauma survivors, veterans, children from violent homes, people in recovery." He looked up. "He's arranged for me to get proper certification. There's a training program in Wyoming that specializes in this work. He's already paid for it." "He knew you'd accept," I realized. Tyler nodded. "He writes that he's watched me struggle to fit into conventional career paths while my true gifts remained untapped. Says my sensitivity, the very quality that made recovering from Lucas's death so difficult, is actually my strength when properly channeled." I saw tears in Tyler's eyes as he continued reading aloud. "You were just 7 when we lost Lucas, too young to understand but old enough to absorb the pain that saturated our home. While Marcus armored himself with achievement and Sarah with intellectual precision, you remained open, vulnerable, and thus most deeply wounded. I've watched you search for purpose, for connection, cycling through jobs and relationships, seeking something you couldn't name. I believe you'll find it here, with these damaged souls who need exactly what you offer: patience, intuition, and profound empathy. The horses respond to you because you approach them without ego or agenda. People in pain need that same quality. They need someone who doesn't try to fix them, but simply stands beside them in their brokenness until they find their own way toward healing. This is not an obligation, but an invitation to become who you were always meant to be, not despite your wounds, but because of them." Tyler folded the letter carefully. "He saw me," he said simply. "The real me." Sarah reached for his hand. "I think he saw all of us more clearly than we saw ourselves." She opened her own proposal again, studying it thoughtfully. "This legal clinic he's suggesting, it's actually what I dreamed of doing in law school, before the lure of corporate success took over." She looked up at me. "Did you know I originally wanted to practice public interest law, helping people who couldn't afford representation?" I shook my head. "You never mentioned it." "I thought Dad was disappointed when I chose corporate law. He never said anything, but..." She trailed off. "Turns out he knew all along what would truly fulfill me." "Edward noticed everything," I said, "even when he seemed distracted or distant." A motorcycle roared up the driveway, Marcus returning from town. He climbed the porch steps, his expression guarded. "The mining company representatives called me," he announced without preamble. "They've sweetened the offer. $30 million now, with $5 million additional allocated for relocating current residents to suitable alternative housing." "They're getting desperate," Sarah observed. "Or they know something we don't about what's under this land," Marcus countered. "Either way, it's a lot of money to walk away from." "For what?" Tyler asked sharply. "So they can strip mine the place where our brother died? Destroy the community Dad built? Turn his legacy into an open pit?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "It's not that simple, Tyler. Think of the good we could do with that money. Set up scholarships in Lucas's name, fund veterans organizations nationwide, help thousands instead of dozens." "It's not just about numbers," I said quietly. "It's about depth versus breadth. Edward chose to make a profound difference in fewer lives rather than a superficial difference in many." "And what about our lives, Mom?" Marcus pressed. What about my children's college funds? Sarah's mortgage, your retirement security? Dad made unilateral decisions that affected all of us without consulting any of us. The accusation hung in the air, undeniable in its truth. Edward had acted alone, keeping secrets that impacted his entire family. You're right, I acknowledged. What he did wasn't fair to us. But the question now is what's fair to do in response. These people have built lives here based on Edward's promises. Do we honor those promises, or do we prioritize our own interests? Why does it have to be either or? Sarah interjected, her legal mind seeking compromise. The trust owns thousands of acres. The mining company doesn't need all of it. Perhaps there's a middle path. Limited extraction rights on the uninhabited portions, preservation of the community areas, a revenue-sharing arrangement that benefits both the ranch and our family. Marcus looked surprised. You're considering staying involved with this place? I'm considering all options, Sarah replied carefully. Dad's proposal resonated with me. Not wholesale relocation, but perhaps dividing my time. The Denver-Billings commute isn't impossible. Marcus turned to me. And you, Mom? You're actually thinking about living here? After 30 years of refusing to even speak about this place? I gazed out at the ranch, at the land that had taken my son and haunted my dreams for decades. I'm thinking that maybe it's time to stop running, to face what happened here and try to make something good from it, like Edward did. Unbelievable, Marcus muttered. He paced the porch, struggling with emotions he rarely allowed himself to show. So I'm the only one not falling for Dad's posthumous guilt trip? The only one thinking practically about our family's future? Or maybe, Tyler suggested gently, you're the only one still keeping the walls up that we all built after Lucas died. The walls Dad spent 30 years trying to break through. Marcus stopped pacing, his expression vulnerable for a split second before hardening again. I need time to think, he said. Tomorrow's meeting with the mining company. I'll be there. But I'm not making any decisions tonight. As he disappeared into the house, Sarah squeezed my hand. He'll come around. It's just harder for him. He was old enough to fully understand when Lucas died, old enough to step into the man-of-the-house role when Dad fell apart. He's had the longest to entrench his coping mechanisms. And he has the most to lose by changing course now, Tyler added. His whole identity is built around being the successful one, the responsible one. I nodded, understanding my eldest son's struggle. Edward knew this would be hardest for Marcus. His proposal acknowledged that, offered partnership rather than charity, investment opportunity rather than emotional appeal. Give him space, Sarah advised. Let him process in his own way. As night fell completely, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready if you're hungry. Nothing formal tonight, just soup and bread in the kitchen. We followed her inside, joining a small group of residents gathered around the kitchen table. Eleanor and Jackson, Olivia, Calvin, and a few others I'd met during the day. The conversation flowed easily, touching on ranch projects, community news, and childhood stories about Lucas that Jackson had clearly heard from Edward. For the first time, I found myself sharing memories of my son without the crushing weight of grief. His love of yellow, his terrible jokes, his habit of collecting injured creatures and nursing them back to health. He sounds like he belonged here, Eleanor observed. He did, I realized. This place, with all its challenges and imperfections, embodies who Lucas was becoming. Compassionate, protective, determined to help those in need. I looked around the table. I see him in all of you, in what you've built together. Later, as I prepared for bed in Edward's quarters, I opened the box of letters again, selecting one at random from the middle years. The date marked the 15th anniversary of Lucas's death. My dearest Helen, 15 years without our boy, a decade and a half of birthdays uncelebrated, graduations unmissed, life unlived. I sat by his memorial today, trying to imagine the young man he would have become at 25. Would he have followed me into medicine, found his own path, married, given us grandchildren? These questions have no answers, only the hollow ache of possibility extinguished too soon. Yet as I watched the children swimming in the lake today, safely, joyfully, under careful supervision, I felt Lucas's presence more strongly than I have in years, not as a ghost or fantasy, but as an inspiration. These children learn water safety in his name. These veterans find purpose because of the purpose I found in honoring him. These families build new lives in the shadow of our greatest loss. Is it wrong to find comfort in this? To discover meaning in tragedy? I don't know. But I do know that the 40 acres we once called home now shelter 27 souls who had nowhere else to go. And somehow that feels right, as if Lucas himself whispered this purpose to me in those dark days after we lost him. I wish you could see it, Helen. Not to reopen your wound, but to witness how beauty can grow from ashes. How our son's brief life continues to ripple outward, touching lives he never knew. Perhaps someday. With eternal love, Edward. I closed the letter, Edward's words resonating through me. For 30 years I had preserved Lucas in memory, keeping his room untouched, his possessions pristine, his name sacred and rarely spoken. I had enshrined my grief, treating it as the only acceptable tribute to my lost child. Meanwhile, Edward had transformed his grief into action, creating living memorials that grew and evolved, touching countless lives. Which of us had truly honored our son's memory? Morning arrived with a flurry of activity, residents preparing for the mining company's visit, Calvin reviewing legal documents, Olivia organizing the community center where the meeting would be held. I found Marcus in Edward's office, examining financial statements with an investor's critical eye. The trust's financial position is more precarious than they're admitting, he said without looking up. Edward's $3 million is nearly depleted after last year's capital improvements. Operating costs exceed sustainable income by about 20% annually. Good morning to you too, I said mildly, setting a cup of coffee beside him. He glanced up, his expression softening slightly. Sorry. Been up since 5 going through these records. He rubbed his eyes. Dad built something extraordinary here, but financially it's on shaky ground. I sat across from him. Calvin mentioned they've had tight years before. Not this tight. The pandemic hit their donor base hard. Energy costs are up, and they've taken in 15 new residents in the past year alone. He tapped a spreadsheet. At current burn rates, they have maybe 18 months before they're in real trouble. Is that why you're looking so intently at the mining offer? Marcus leaned back, sighing. Partly. $30 million would solve a lot of problems, both for the residents and for us. But it's more than that. He hesitated. I've been doing some research on Daniel Reed, the former resident making accusations. And his claims aren't entirely without merit. The trust's structure gives administrators broad discretion in allocating funds. Dad did occasionally use trust assets for personal expenses when here at the ranch. Vehicles, travel, medical equipment. All arguably for ranch purposes, but the lines are blurry. You think there could be legal issues? Nothing criminal, Marcus clarified. But enough gray areas to create problems if scrutinized too closely. An IRS audit could be devastating, not just financially, but reputationally. I considered this new information. What are you suggesting? A clean break, he said.
Accept the mining company's offer, but with conditions. Use a portion of the funds to relocate residents, establish new facilities elsewhere, properly endow the operation with clear governance and financial controls. He met my eyes. It would preserve Dad's legacy while protecting everyone involved, including our family. Before I could respond, Sarah appeared in the doorway. They're here, 2 executives, an environmental consultant, and their attorney. We gathered in the community center, a converted equipment shed that now served as meeting space, classroom, and occasional theater. The mining company representatives, sleek in expensive suits despite the rural setting, presented their proposal with polished professionalism.
$30 million for mineral rights to the entire property, explained Charles Brookfield, the silver-haired CEO, plus $5 million dedicated to relocating current residents to equivalent or superior accommodations within a 50-mile radius. We've identified several potential properties, added his colleague, advancing through a slideshow of ranches and small compounds. All would accommodate your current population with room for growth. Our environmental assessment indicates minimal disruption to surrounding areas, the consultant assured us. State-of-the-art extraction techniques, comprehensive reclamation plans. All perfectly legal under the terms of the trust, concluded their attorney, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s. We've reviewed the documentation thoroughly. Though we'd need all current residents to vacate within 6 months of signing, Brookfield added. Our investors are eager to begin operations. Calvin, seated beside me, remained impassive. And the lake? He asked. What happens to it? The executives exchanged glances. The extraction area would encompass that portion of the property, Brookfield admitted, though we'd be happy to relocate any memorial structures to the new facility. I felt a chill at his words. Move Lucas's memorial? Drain the lake where he'd died, but where dozens of children had since learned to swim safely. Transform this place of both tragedy and redemption into an industrial site. What about the historical significance of this property? Sarah asked. The community that's been established here? We understand your emotional attachment, the attorney said smoothly. But realistically, buildings can be rebuilt, communities relocated. The mineral deposits under this land, however, are fixed assets, increasingly valuable in today's market. $35 million is a phenomenal offer, Brookfield emphasized. Nearly triple the property's assessed value. It would secure the financial future of your charitable endeavor for generations. The way he said charitable endeavor, slightly dismissive, made clear his view of Lee Ranch's worth compared to the resources beneath it. We'd like time to discuss privately, Marcus said, ever the businessman. Could you give us an hour? Of course, Brookfield agreed, gathering his materials. We'll wait at our hotel in town. Call when you're ready to proceed. After they left, the room erupted in concerned conversation. Ranch residents who had observed the presentation voiced fears about relocation, community disruption, the loss of the home they'd built. Calvin raised concerns about the feasibility of finding equivalent property in the region. Olivia questioned the environmental impact, despite the company's reassurances. Marcus quieted the room. I understand everyone's attachment to this specific location, but practically speaking, the financial situation here is unsustainable. The trust is running deficits that will deplete reserves within 2 years. This offer could secure everyone's future on sounder financial footing. It's not just about money, argued Jackson, surprising everyone with his clarity. This is Lucas's place. His memory lives here. Mr. Edwards said we must never forget. We wouldn't forget, Marcus assured him. We'd take that memory with us, establish a new memorial. It wouldn't be the same, Jackson insisted. The lake is special. The flowers know where to grow. Eleanor placed a gentle hand on her son's shoulder. Jackson speaks from the heart, but he's right. This land holds meaning beyond its monetary value. Your father understood that. It's why he preserved it all these years. I watched my children's reactions. Marcus calculating, Sarah conflicted, Tyler clearly opposed to relocation. The residents looked to me expectantly, as if Edward's widow held some decisive authority. "What would Dad do?" Tyler asked quietly. Marcus shook his head. "Dad created this situation by keeping secrets and making unilateral decisions. Maybe it's time for transparency and collaborative planning instead." "I agree," Sarah surprised us by saying. "But collaboration means considering all stakeholders, not just financial outcomes, but human ones too." Calvin cleared his throat. "Legally, the trust gives Mrs. Lee significant influence in any major decisions, though not absolute authority. The board of directors, currently myself, Olivia, and 2 others, must approve any property transactions." All eyes turned to me. "I need to see something before I can decide," I said, rising from my chair. "Tyler, would you drive me to town?" My youngest son looked confused, but nodded. "Of course." "We'll reconvene in an hour," I told the group. "This isn't a decision to be rushed." In the car, Tyler asked where we were going. "The county assessor's office," I replied. "There's something in Edward's letters I need to verify." At the county building, I requested historical property records for Lee Ranch, particularly focusing on the northern parcel Edward had sold the previous year. The clerk, curious but professional, provided the files I needed. 30 minutes later, I had my answer. I asked Tyler to make one more stop, the mining company's hotel, before returning to the ranch. When we rejoined the group at the community center, I noticed Marcus had separated the residents into smaller discussion groups, each tackling different aspects of the potential relocation: housing needs, program requirements, transition logistics. Ever the efficient manager, even in a situation that clearly tore at his conscience. "Mom, did you find what you were looking for?" Sarah asked as I entered. "Yes," I said, "Sid. And I believe I have a solution that might work for everyone. But first, I need to explain something Edward did that none of us knew about." The room quieted as I took center stage. Last year, Edward sold the northern parcel of our property for $3 million to fund improvements here at the ranch. What none of you know, what he didn't record in any of his letters or journals, is that he included a specific clause in that sale agreement. I held up the document I'd retrieved from the county records. Edward retained first right of refusal on any subsequent sale of that parcel. When I checked with the mining company just now, I confirmed what I suspected. The northern parcel they purchased last year contains most of the mineral deposits they're interested in. Murmurs rippled through the room as understanding dawned. They didn't tell us they already owned part of the property, Sarah realized. They're trying to consolidate their holdings. Exactly, I said. And according to their own geological surveys, which they reluctantly showed me, the deposits extend primarily northward, away from the ranch core, away from the lake and memorial, away from most of the buildings and facilities that make up this community. Marcus looked intrigued despite himself. "So you're suggesting—" "A counteroffer," I said firmly. "We sell them additional acreage to the north and east, uninhabited areas that would give them access to most of the deposits, but retain the central ranch, including the lake, memorial, and all current housing and facilities. We use the proceeds to create a proper endowment that ensures financial stability for the ranch long term." "The mining company won't be happy with partial access," Marcus pointed out. "No, but they want these deposits badly enough to compromise," I countered. "And they know we now understand they've been less than forthcoming about their existing ownership stake. It strengthens our negotiating position considerably." Calvin was already reviewing the property maps. "This could work. If we retain about 800 acres around the core facilities and sell the remaining 2,200 acres, We'd have a buffer zone while still giving them access to roughly 70% of the mineral deposits. We could stipulate strict environmental protections for the watershed, added Sarah, professional instincts engaged. Ensure no contamination reaches the lake or groundwater. And use the proceeds to create an actual endowment, Marcus said, running calculations on his tablet. Properly invested, even $15 million could generate enough annual income to close the operating deficit while building reserves for future needs. As the discussion evolved, I watched my children transform before my eyes. Sarah's legal mind crafting protective covenants, Marcus's financial acumen structuring a sustainable economic model, Tyler's empathy ensuring resident concerns were addressed, each applying their unique strengths to protect Edward's legacy while adapting it to new realities. When Brookfield and his team returned, they were visibly shocked by our counterproposal. After initial resistance and some hard negotiation, during which Marcus proved himself every bit the formidable businessman I'd known he was, we reached an agreement in principle, $18 million for the non-core acreage, with comprehensive environmental protections, a phased extraction timeline, and a small percentage of ongoing royalties directed to the trust. Not the outcome we anticipated, Brookfield admitted as they prepared to leave, but workable. Our board will need to approve, of course. As will ours, Calvin replied with professional courtesy. After the mining executives departed, the mood at the ranch was cautiously optimistic. We hadn't sold out Edward's vision, nor had we rejected pragmatic concerns. We'd found a middle path that honored both. As residents dispersed to their evening routines, my 3 children and I walked down to Lucas's memorial by the lake. The setting sun cast long shadows across the water, turning it to molten gold. "How did you know about that first right of refusal clause?" Marcus asked. "It wasn't in any of the documents I reviewed." "It wasn't in Edward's letters either," I admitted. "But I remembered something he wrote about always having a backup plan. Always creating safety nets that others might not see." It made me wonder if he'd anticipated this very situation. "Dad playing chess while everyone else played checkers," Tyler said with a smile. "He wasn't perfect," Sarah observed, "but he was brilliant in his own way. He was preparing us," I realized, the thought crystallizing as I spoke it. All those letters, the videos, the legacy proposals, they weren't just explanations of the past. They were his way of equipping us for exactly this moment, when his creation would face its first real threat without him. Marcus gazed out at the lake, his expression softening. He knew we'd find a way through together, using all our different strengths. He glanced at his siblings. Maybe that's what he wanted all along. Not for each of us to take up residence here necessarily, but for us to heal as a family by protecting what he built. As twilight deepened, Jackson appeared with his nightly flowers for the memorial, carefully arranging yellow daisies around Lucas's plaque. He hummed softly as he worked, a contented guardian of memory. "What do you think Lucas would make of all this?" Tyler wondered aloud. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to truly imagine my firstborn as he might have been, grown now, perhaps with children of his own. "I think he would be proud," I said. Proud that his father created something beautiful from tragedy. Proud that his siblings came together to protect it. Proud that strangers found home in his name. Jackson looked up, his expression serious. "Lucas is happy now," he said with absolute certainty. "Mr. Edward told me they talk sometimes when the stars are bright. They're both watching over us." In the simple faith of this man whom Edward had rescued from homelessness, I found unexpected comfort, not because I believed in supernatural communication, but because I recognized the essential truth behind his words. Those we love continue to influence us long after they're gone. Lucas lived on in this community, Edward lived on in his letters, his plans, his vision, and now it was our turn to carry that legacy forward, not exactly as Edward had envisioned, perhaps, but in a way that honored the heart of what he'd created while adapting to new realities. "So what happens next?" Sarah asked as stars began appearing overhead. "That," I said, "is up to each of us to decide." A week passed at Lee Ranch, the longest I'd stayed in Montana since Lucas's death. Each day brought new revelations as I immersed myself in Edward's hidden world. I read his letters chronologically, a dozen each evening, watching through his words as the community evolved from one homeless veteran to the thriving sanctuary it had become. I toured every facility with Olivia. The schoolhouse where children who'd struggled in traditional education thrived under individualized attention. The workshop where veterans crafted furniture that generated income for the ranch. The medical clinic staffed by volunteer doctors from Billings. And the therapeutic riding center where traumatized children connected with rescued horses. The swimming program by the lake became my daily ritual. Sitting on the memorial bench watching instructors teach water safety with meticulous care. 47 children had learned to swim here. 47 lives potentially saved from Lucas's fate. My own children responded differently to Edward's legacy proposals. Marcus returned to Denver after 2 days, citing pressing business matters, but promising to consider options. His parting words, "Don't make any permanent decisions yet, Mom," carried both concern and caution. Sarah took a 2-week leave from her law firm, spending hours with Calvin, reviewing the ranch's legal challenges, immigration cases, veterans' benefits appeals, custody issues for women fleeing abuse. She worked with quiet intensity, asking occasional questions, but keeping her thoughts private. Tyler never left. He moved into a small cabin near the stables, spending his days working with the horses and his evenings in long conversations with Jackson and the veterans. I'd never seen my youngest son so centered, so purposeful. The restlessness that had defined him seemed to evaporate in the Montana air. On my 7th morning, I awoke early and walked alone to Benjamin's memorial. The rising sun cast long shadows across the lake that had taken my son and transformed my husband. Decades of grief and secrets had flowed from this place, yet somehow hope had emerged as well. "I thought I might find you here," came a voice behind me. Eleanor approached slowly with her cane, Jackson following with a bouquet of wildflowers. "Tuesday flowers for Lucas," Jackson explained, carefully arranging them at the memorial. Eleanor eased herself onto the bench beside me. "Edward came here every morning, too. Said it helped him start the day with purpose, remembering why all this exists." I watched Jackson whispering to the memorial, having some private conversation with the boy he'd never met, but somehow knew through Edward's stories. "He kept Lucas alive here," I said softly, "while I was keeping him dead in Denver." "Different ways of grieving," Eleanor corrected. "Neither right nor wrong, but Edward's way helped others. Created this. My way helped no one, not even me. Yet here you are now," Eleanor observed. "That's what matters." Jackson finished his flower arrangement and wandered toward the lake's edge, giving us privacy while remaining within sight. "I've been reading Edward's letters," I told her. "One struck me particularly from about 5 years ago. He described watching you and Jackson at the 4th of July celebration. Jackson was helping younger children with sparklers, so careful, so protective. Edward wrote that it reminded him of Lucas with his younger siblings." Eleanor smiled. "Edward often said Jackson and Lucas would have been soul brothers, both so gentle, so aware of others' feelings. In that letter, Edward wondered if I would ever meet Jackson, if I would see what he saw, Lucas's spirit living on in this community." I took a deep breath. He wrote that his greatest regret was building all this without me. It was. Eleanor confirmed. He told me once that success felt hollow without you to share it, that saving strangers couldn't compensate for the distance growing between him and his own family. Yet he never told us. Fear is powerful, Eleanor said simply. Once he'd established the pattern of secrecy, breaking it became more terrifying with each passing year. We sat in companionable silence, watching Jackson skip stones across the lake surface. No fear of the water that had claimed Lucas, just respectful caution instilled by Edward's swimming program. I have made my decision, I said finally. Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. I thought today might be the day. How did you know? You have Edward's look, the one he got when his mind was settled. She patted my hand. Whatever you've decided, he would respect it. I'm staying, I said, the words bringing immediate lightness. Not visiting, not observing, staying, making this place my home. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Edward would be so grateful. I need to honor what he built here, what Lucas inspired. I watched Tyler emerge from the tree line heading toward the stables. And I need to support Tyler's healing. He's found himself here in ways I never thought possible. And your other children? They'll make their own choices. Sarah seems drawn to the legal work, though she hasn't committed yet. Marcus is struggling the most with all this, but I have to respect his journey, whatever direction it takes. Family is complicated, Eleanor acknowledged, especially when secrets are suddenly revealed. I've spent 30 years running from this place, I said, trying to outpace grief that always caught me anyway. Edward found another path, using grief as fuel for something beautiful. I want to follow that path now, however late my start. It's never too late for new beginnings, Eleanor assured me. Edward believed that with his whole heart. Later that morning, I gathered my 3 children in Edward's office. Sarah had just returned from observing Veterans Court in Billings. Marcus had flown in from Denver, his expression guarded. Tyler arrived last, horsehair clinging to his jeans and a new confidence in his bearing. I've made my decision, I announced without preamble. I'm moving to the ranch permanently. I'll be taking the position Edward outlined for me. Community historian and heartkeeper. Marcus's face tightened, though he said nothing. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Tyler broke into a broad smile. I'm not asking any of you to follow my choice, I continued. Edward gave each of us separate proposals because he understood we're different people with different needs. All I ask is that you respect my decision as I'll respect yours. I've decided too, Tyler said, excitement barely contained. I'm accepting Dad's proposal. Equine Therapy Program Director. I'll be working with veterans and children using horses as therapeutic partners. And your apartment in Denver? Marcus asked. Your job at the music store? Tyler shrugged. Already gave notice on both. Nothing there was permanent anyway. Sarah? I prompted. My daughter straightened, lawyer mode engaging. I'm taking a 6-month leave of absence from the firm, a sabbatical to establish the legal aid clinic Dad proposed. After that, she shrugged, an uncharacteristic gesture of uncertainty. We'll see. All eyes turned to Marcus, who stood with arms crossed defensively. I can't uproot my family for this fantasy. My business is in Denver. My children are in schools they love. My wife has her own career. No one's asking you to uproot anything, I said gently. Edward's proposal for you involved occasional consultation, strategic planning. Presence, not residence. And what happens to the money from the mining company? Just left on the table? The offer will keep, Sarah interjected. And there are other options for responsible resource development that wouldn't destroy the community. I've been researching alternatives this week. Marcus looked around at our faces, his mother and siblings united in a vision he couldn't yet share. I need time, he finally said. "This is all happening too fast." "Take all the time you need," I assured him. "This place isn't going anywhere. Neither are we." That evening, as sunset painted the Montana sky in spectacular hues, I stood on the porch of what would soon be my home again. Ranch residents gathered for their weekly community dinner in the converted barn. I could see Tyler helping Jackson carry platters of food, Sarah deep in conversation with Calvin, and even Marcus cautiously joining a group of veterans examining plans for a new workshop. The memorial bell rang softly, the signal for gathering. As if by magnetic pull, my family found each other in the crowd, walking together toward the dining hall. Not perfect, not completely healed, but moving in the same direction for the first time since Lucas's death. Behind us, the lake gleamed golden in the setting sun, no longer just the place that took my son, but the place where his legacy lived on in every child who learned to swim, every veteran who found purpose, every family given shelter. Edward had been right all along. The only way past grief was through it, not around it, as I'd tried for 30 years, but straight through its heart to find meaning on the other side. 1 month into my new life at Lee Ranch, I woke to the sound of hammering. Outside my window, a construction crew, mostly ranch residents with a few professionals from town, was working on the foundation for Tyler's Equine Therapy Center. The project, funded partly by the mining deal proceeds, was the first of several improvements planned to expand the ranch's services. Sarah was due to return to Denver today after her initial 2-week stay had stretched to 4. She'd established the framework for the legal clinic, secured partnerships with law schools for student clinics, and created a referral network with social service agencies. She promised to return monthly and continue her work remotely between visits. Marcus remained the most distant, though not entirely absent. He'd made 3 weekend trips to the ranch, each time with his financial advisor's hat firmly in place, reviewing budgets, suggesting investments, strengthening financial controls. He engaged with the ranch as a project, not a home, maintaining emotional distance even as he contributed his expertise. His wife Diane and their children had yet to visit, a boundary I respected but hoped would eventually soften. I'd settled into my role with unexpected ease. 3 mornings a week, I taught history classes to the ranch's school-age residents and adult learners pursuing GEDs. I'd begun recording oral histories from the veterans and longtime residents, creating an archive of the community's evolution. The rest of my time was spent helping wherever needed, from the greenhouse to the kitchen to the never-ending administrative tasks that kept the ranch functioning. Today was special, though. I'd finally gathered the courage to do what I'd been avoiding since my return. With Eleanor's help, I was sorting through Lucas's things, the boxes Edward had carefully packed and stored in the farmhouse attic after our hasty departure 30 years ago. "You don't have to do this all at once," Eleanor said gently as we opened the first dusty carton. "I know," I replied, lifting out a faded yellow t-shirt. "But it's time. These things shouldn't be hidden away anymore." We worked in companionable silence, unpacking toys, books, clothes, the artifacts of a 10-year-old boy's interrupted life. Each item triggered memories, some painful, others surprisingly sweet. Lucas's baseball mitt, still bearing the oil stain where Edward had conditioned the leather. A collection of polished rocks Lucas had gathered from the creek. His favorite stuffed dog, threadbare from years of being clutched in sleep. "What will you do with everything?" Eleanor asked as the piles grew around us. "Share it," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "The books will go to the schoolhouse library, the clothes to families who need them, the toys to children here." I held up a dinosaur figurine. Lucas would have hated knowing his things were gathering dust when they could bring joy to others. Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Edward would be so proud of you, Helen." I should have done this years ago, I admitted, instead of sealing his room like a mausoleum. We heal in our own time, Eleanor said. You weren't ready then. You are now. At the bottom of the final box, I found something unexpected, a child's drawing in a simple frame. Lucas had created it just weeks before his death. A stick figure family standing before a house with a distinctive red barn, a blue lake in the background. Across the top, in careful childish printing, my home. Tears blurred my vision. I'd forgotten this, I whispered. It hung in our kitchen in Denver until I couldn't bear to look at it anymore. Edward must have saved it when I asked him to put it away. It belongs somewhere people can see it, Eleanor suggested. Perhaps in the dining hall? I nodded, unable to speak. Lucas's simple drawing captured everything. The home he'd loved, the family he'd cherished, the place that would eventually become his lasting legacy. A knock at the attic door interrupted our contemplation. Sarah stood in the doorway, dressed for travel, her briefcase in hand. "Mom," she called. "My flight's in 3 hours. I need to head to the airport." "Coming," I replied, carefully setting the drawing aside. "Just finishing up here." Sarah's eyes swept over the organized piles, understanding immediately what I'd been doing. "Lucas's things?" I nodded. Time to let them breathe again, be useful to others. Sarah stepped into the room, kneeling beside a stack of books. She picked up a battered copy of Where the Wild Things Are. "I remember him making Dad read this every night for a month," she said softly. "Dad would do all the monster voices." "You remember that?" I was surprised. Sarah had been only 8 when Lucas died. "I remember more than you think," she replied. Lucas teaching me to catch frogs, Lucas defending me when Marcus teased me, Lucas sneaking me cookies after bedtime. I reached for her hand. "I didn't realize. We never talked about him. After." "None of us did," Sarah acknowledged. "It was like he became a ghost we all saw but never mentioned." She replaced the book carefully. "That's what's different here. His memory isn't hidden away. It's woven into everything." Eleanor discreetly excused herself, leaving us alone among the treasures of Lucas's brief life. "Your flight," I reminded Sarah gently. "I've been thinking," she said, still looking at the books. "This 6-month sabbatical, I'm not sure I want to go back afterward." My heart leapt, but I kept my expression neutral. "What are you considering?" "Nathan and I have been talking. His environmental law practice could easily relocate to Billings. The kids are young enough that changing schools wouldn't be traumatic." She looked up at me. "And the work here, Mom, it's what I went to law school for in the first place, before I got seduced by corner offices and corporate clients." "You'd move to Montana?" I asked carefully. "Not to the ranch, at least not right away, but Billings is only an hour away. We could get a place there, spend weekends here." She smiled wryly. "Nathan's already researching property values. Says it's a lot more house for a lot less money than Denver." "What about Marcus? Have you told him?" Sarah sighed. "Not yet. He's already feeling outnumbered. I don't want him to think we're ganging up on him." "He'll come around," I assured her, though with less certainty than I'd like. "In his own way, in his own time." "I hope so," Sarah said, rising to her feet. "Because I think Dad was right about all of us. This place has something we each need, even Marcus, though he's fighting it hardest." She checked her watch. "I really do have to go now." I stood, brushing dust from my jeans, and followed her downstairs. Outside, Tyler and Jackson were waiting to say goodbye, Jackson clutching a farewell card he'd made himself. As Sarah hugged her brother, I noticed Marcus's SUV pulling into the yard. He wasn't expected until the weekend. "What's he doing here?" Tyler wondered aloud. I don't know, I replied, watching as my eldest son emerged from his vehicle, his expression unreadable. Marcus approached our small group, nodding a greeting. Sarah, thought I might catch you before you left. Just heading out, Sarah confirmed. Everything okay? We weren't expecting you until Saturday. Change of plans, Marcus replied cryptically. Mom, can we talk? All of us? Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. Of course. Sarah's flight. I'll reschedule, Sarah interrupted, studying her brother intently. This seems important. It is, Marcus confirmed. We gathered in Edward's office, the heart of the ranch's operations and increasingly the center of our family discussions. Marcus remained standing while the rest of us found seats. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began, pacing slightly. About Dad, about this place, about what it means for our family. And? Tyler prompted when Marcus fell silent. And I've made some decisions, Marcus continued. First, I've established a scholarship fund in Lucas's name at the University of Montana. Full rides for children who've experienced trauma and want to pursue careers in medicine, psychology, or social work. Marcus, that's wonderful, I said, surprised and touched. He nodded, acknowledging my approval. Second, I've created a financial oversight committee for the ranch. Professional fund managers who'll ensure long-term sustainability without compromising the mission. They'll work under Calvin's supervision, but bring expertise the current board lacks. Smart, Sarah commented. That addresses the concerns you raised about financial governance. Third, Marcus continued, and here he hesitated slightly. I've purchased the old Williams property adjacent to the ranch. 70 acres, including that ridge to the west. We all stared at him, confused. You bought land next to the ranch? Tyler asked. Why? Marcus took a deep breath. Because Diane and I are building a vacation home there. Nothing extravagant, but big enough for extended family visits. The kids need to know this part of their heritage. And He paused, looking more vulnerable than I'd seen him in years. I need to find my own connection to this place. Not living here full-time like you and Tyler. Not commuting like Sarah's planning, but having a foothold. Somewhere that's mine, but connected. I felt tears welling in my eyes. Oh, Marcus. Don't make too much of it, he warned, but his voice lacked its usual edge. I'm still keeping my business in Denver. Still maintaining my life there. This is just a bridge. Between the worlds Dad somehow managed to inhabit simultaneously. Tyler stood and embraced his brother, a gesture Marcus stiffly accepted but didn't return. It's a start, Tyler said quietly. It's what I can offer, Marcus replied. For now. Sarah smiled knowingly. And once Diane experiences Montana summers and the kids discover ranch life. One step at a time, Marcus cautioned, but a ghost of a smile played at his lips. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I studied my eldest son, the child who'd shouldered so much responsibility after Lucas's death, who'd armored himself with success and control. This was a monumental concession from him, an admission that perhaps Edward's vision had merit after all. Not a full surrender, but an olive branch, a willingness to explore reconciliation on his own terms. Edward would be so pleased, I said softly. Marcus's expression softened. Maybe. Or maybe he'd say I'm still being too cautious, too calculating. He shrugged. Either way, it's the best I can do right now. It's perfect, I assured him. Exactly what this family needs, a way forward that honors everyone's boundaries and needs. Outside, the construction crew continued their work on the Equine Therapy Center. Inside, in this room where Edward had planned and dreamed and written his unsent letters, another piece of healing fell into place. Not complete restoration, that would take more time, but a significant step toward wholeness. We were becoming, if not the family we'd been before Lucas's death, then a new configuration built around his memory and his father's vision. Different, but no less connected. Wounded, but healing. Separate paths, but a shared destination. So, Marcus said, breaking the emotional tension with his characteristic practicality, now that I've invested in this place, someone better show me these horses Tyler keeps talking about. I want to see what all the fuss is about.
Tyler laughed. Jackson will be thrilled to give you the grand tour. Fair warning, you might end up on horseback before the day's out. Unlikely, Marcus replied dryly, but I suppose stranger things have happened. As we filed out of the office, I lingered behind, my gaze falling on the photograph of Lucas that had always occupied a place of honor on Edward's desk. For so long, that image had brought only pain, a reminder of what was lost, what could never be recovered. Now, surrounded by evidence of what his brief life had inspired, I felt something different. Not just grief, but gratitude. Not just loss, but legacy. We found our way home, Lucas, I whispered, touching his smiling face. All of us, finally.